The alarm screamed through the monitoring station like a wounded animal. Lieutenant Sarah Park dropped her coffee and ran to her console. Her hands shook as she pulled up the data. It couldn't be real. It had to be a mistake. "Commander," she shouted across the room. "You need to see this right now." Commander James Rodriguez pushed away from his own station and hurried over. He was a big man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been running the Cassini's Eye Deep Space Monitoring Station for 12 years. In all that time, nothing interesting had ever happened. "Until now, what is it, Park?" he asked, leaning over her shoulder to see the screen. "It's a transponder code, sir. An old one. Really old." Her finger trembled as she pointed to the identification number on the screen. "UES Prometheus. Sir, that ship has been missing for 300 years. Rodriguez felt his stomach drop. Everyone knew about the Prometheus. It was a legend, a ghost story that parents told their children. 50,000 people had boarded that massive colony ship in 2247, heading for a new world around Tau Ceti. The ship had jumped into dark space and never came out. No wreckage, no signals, nothing. For 3 centuries it had simply been gone. "Run a full diagnostic," Rodriguez said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Check everything. This has to be an error." Park's fingers flew across her keyboard. Minutes passed. The other technicians gathered around, whispering to each other. Everyone had stopped working. Everyone was watching. "No error, sir," Park finally said. "The signal is real. It's coming from coordinates about 50 light-years from Earth. The transponder code is authentic. It matches the original Prometheus registration perfectly." Rodriguez sat down heavily in the nearest chair. "Get me Admiral Chen. Right now." Admiral Chen Reiko stood on the bridge of the UEF flagship Horizon, staring at the holographic display floating in front of her. She was 63 years old, with short silver hair and the kind of face that had seen too much but never looked away. Behind her stood Dr. Marcus Webb, a thin man with nervous hands who kept pushing his glasses up his nose. "It's impossible," Webb said for the 3rd time. "The Prometheus couldn't have survived this long. Even if the ship stayed intact, the crew would have died centuries ago. Generation ships weren't designed for voyages longer than 80 years. "I know it's impossible, Doctor," Chen said quietly. "But that signal is real, and it's asking for permission to come home." She touched the display and the message played again. It was short, repeated over and over in a loop. The voice sounded human but strange, like someone speaking through water. "This is UES Prometheus to Earth Command. We request permission to return home. We have much to share. We are still human. We are also more." Chen felt a chill run down her spine every time she heard those last words. "We are also more." What did that mean? "I want a probe sent immediately," she said. "Full sensor suite. And get me Krethar from the Galactic Assembly. They need to know about this." Webb nodded and hurried away. Chen turned back to the display and watched the blinking dot that represented the Prometheus. Her grandmother had known people on that ship. Real people with real names. Julia Santos. Chen's grandmother had cried when the Prometheus vanished. She had cried for her friend who was gone forever. But maybe not forever. Maybe Julia had somehow survived. The thought made Chen's hands shake, so she clenched them into fists. The probe reached the Prometheus 6 days later. When the first images came through, everyone in the command center went silent. The ship was huge, just like the record said. 2 miles long, shaped like a massive cylinder that slowly rotated to create artificial gravity. But it was wrong. All wrong. The hull looked like it had grown instead of being built. Metal flowed in organic patterns, like veins or tree branches. Lights pulsed along the surface in rhythms that seemed almost like breathing. Parts of the ship seemed solid, while other sections flickered and phased as if they existed in multiple dimensions at once. "What am I looking at?" Chen asked. Her voice was barely a whisper. Webb stood beside her, his face pale. "I don't know, Admiral. The ship is generating energy signatures I've never seen before. The hull material is reading as both metal and something organic, and those energy patterns—" He paused, his voice cracking slightly. "Admiral, the ship is responding to our scans. It's scanning us back, with sensors far more advanced than anything we have." Chen felt her heart racing. She looked around the command center at her crew. Everyone looked frightened. Even the experienced officers who had seen combat looked scared. A new presence materialized on the bridge. Krethar, the Galactic Assembly observer, appeared as a hologram, The Valurian looked like a being made of living crystal, its facets reflecting light in rainbow patterns. Its voice sounded like wind chimes. "Admiral Chen," Krethar said, "I have consulted the Assembly archives. What you have found is extremely dangerous." "Explain," Chen said. "3 other species in galactic history have attempted what your ship appears to have done. They tried to merge their biological nature with their technology. They sought to become more than what they were." Krethar's crystalline body dimmed slightly. All 3 species were lost. They either became pure machines that destroyed their creators, or they descended into madness. The Assembly has protocols for this situation. Protocols that require immediate quarantine or destruction. "You want us to destroy our own people?" Chen's voice was sharp with anger. "I want you to understand the risk," Krethar replied calmly. "But I also know humans. You will attempt contact regardless of the danger. You always do. It is both your greatest strength and your greatest weakness." Chen turned back to the display showing the Prometheus. The ship seemed to pulse with light, as if it knew it was being discussed, as if it was waiting. "Prepare a manned mission," Chen said. "I want a full contact team. Scientists, engineers, first contact specialists. If that ship has our people on it, I'm bringing them home." "Admiral," Webb started to protest. "That's an order, Doctor. We're going to find out what happened to the Prometheus, and we're going to find out if the people on board are still human enough to save." 5 days later, the scout ship Magellan approached the Prometheus. Captain Sarah Chen, the Admiral's niece, sat in the pilot's seat with her hands on the controls. Behind her sat Webb, Zix, the 4-armed Korthian engineer, and 3 other specialists. Everyone was quiet. Everyone was scared. As they got closer, the Prometheus changed. The docking port on the massive ship's side began to reshape itself. Metal flowed like water, forming a perfect docking collar that matched the Magellan exactly. "It's adapting to us," Zix said, his multiple hands gripping his seat. "I've never seen anything like this." The ship knew what we needed before we asked. The Magellan docked with a gentle thud. For a long moment, nobody moved. "Well," Sarah Chen said, trying to sound braver than she felt, "let's go meet our ghosts." The airlock opened with a hiss. Beyond it, the corridor was dark. But as they stepped inside, lights began to glow. Soft, warm lights that seemed to respond to their presence. The walls were smooth and curved, recognizably human in design, but different. They seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting ever so slightly. Sarah took a step forward, and the corridor lit up ahead of her, as if welcoming her deeper into the ship. From somewhere in the darkness, a voice called out. It sounded young and old at the same time, human and not human. "Welcome home," the voice said. "We've been waiting for you for so long." Sarah Chen kept her hand near her weapon as the team moved deeper into the Prometheus. The corridor curved gently ahead of them, and the walls seemed to watch them pass. She could feel it in her bones. The ship was alive in a way that made her skin crawl and her heart race at the same time. "Contact ahead," Zix whispered, his 4 hands tensing on his scanner. "Single life form, humanoid, moving toward us." Sarah raised her hand, signaling the team to stop. They waited in the breathing corridor as footsteps echoed toward them. Soft footsteps, unhurried and calm. A woman emerged from the shadows ahead. She looked to be in her 30s, with dark hair and brown eyes. She wore a simple gray uniform that seemed to shift colors slightly in the light. She smiled at them, a warm and genuine smile. "Hello," the woman said. "My name is Julia Santos. I'm a member of the original crew of the Prometheus." "Welcome aboard." Webb made a choking sound. "That's impossible. Julia Santos would be over 300 years old. She would be dead." Julia's smile didn't waver. "I am over 300 years old, Doctor. I am Julia Santos, and as you can see, I'm very much alive." Sarah studied the woman carefully. She looked human. She moved like a human. But something was off. The way she stood was too perfect, too balanced. Her skin had a faint shimmer to it, like there was light moving beneath the surface. "What happened to you?" Sarah asked softly. "What happened to this ship?" Julia's expression became sad. "Come with me. I'll show you. It's a long story, and you deserve to know everything." They followed Julia through the corridors of the Prometheus. The deeper they went, the stranger things became. They passed rooms where the walls were transparent, showing vast organic systems that pulsed and flowed. They saw people walking through the halls. Men, women, children. All of them looked human at first glance, but they all had that same shimmer beneath their skin, that same perfect balance in their movements. Julia led them to a large observation deck. Through the massive windows, they could see Earth in the distance, a beautiful blue marble against the black of space. Around the deck, other crew members gathered to watch the visitors. Sarah counted at least 30 people, all ages, all watching with curious eyes. 15 years into our journey, Julia began, we encountered something unexpected, a dark matter cluster. It was beautiful and terrible. It pulled us out of our jump and damaged our drives beyond repair. We were stranded between stars, too far from any help. We had supplies for 80 years, but we couldn't move. We couldn't go forward or back. We were going to die out here slowly, knowing that we had failed. Webb sat down heavily, his scanner forgotten in his hands. What did you do? Our chief engineer, Dr. Yuki Tanaka, had an idea. A desperate idea. Julia gestured to an old woman sitting near the window. The woman's hair was white and her face was lined with age, but her eyes were bright and sharp. She suggested we integrate our neural interfaces directly with the ship's systems. We thought if we could use human creativity and problem-solving alongside the ship's computational power, maybe we could fix what the AI alone couldn't solve. Yuki Tanaka stood and walked over to them. She moved slowly, but with that same perfect balance. It worked, she said, her voice rough with age. We repaired the drives. But something else happened. Something wonderful and terrifying. The connection didn't end. It grew stronger. The ship learned from us. We learned from it. Children were born with natural interfaces. The ship started to understand biology. We started to understand technology at a fundamental level. You became one with the ship, Zix breathed, his eyes wide with wonder and horror. We became something new, Julia corrected gently. Not human. Not machine. Both and more. Over generations we evolved together. The ship can heal itself by understanding how our bodies heal. We can enhance ourselves by understanding how the ship's systems work. We think together, dream together. The ship needs us to imagine solutions to problems. We need the ship to give those solutions form. Sarah felt dizzy. She looked around at the crew, at these people who claimed to be human but were clearly something else. Why did you come back? After 300 years, why now? An older man stepped forward. He had kind eyes and gray hair. Because we're still human enough to miss home. We're still human enough to want to share what we've learned. We laugh, we cry, we love. We have children who play and dream. We die eventually. Though we live much longer now, we're not gods or monsters. We're just humans who changed to survive and then kept changing because we could. Webb was shaking his head. The Galactic Assembly has seen this before. Species that tried to merge with technology. They all failed. They either lost their humanity completely or went mad. How are you different? Yuki Tanaka smiled sadly. We stayed mortal, Doctor. That's the key. We didn't try to become immortal. We still age. We still die. We let our consciousness end so new generations can begin fresh. Every child born on this ship is a new person, not a copy or continuation of someone else. We remembered that death gives life meaning. The species that failed forgot that. They tried to live forever and lost themselves. A young girl, maybe 10 years old, ran up to Sarah and tugged on her sleeve. Sarah looked down into bright, curious eyes. The girl's skin had that subtle shimmer, and thin lines of light traced patterns along her arms like circuit boards beneath flesh. Are you from Earth? The girl asked excitedly. My mom told me stories about Earth, about oceans and forests and animals. Is it still beautiful? Sarah felt tears spring to her eyes. She knelt down to look at the girl at eye level. Yes, sweetheart. It's still beautiful. More beautiful than any story, the girl beamed. I want to see it someday. I want to swim in an ocean and feel rain on my face. Maybe you will, Sarah whispered. Later, Julia took Sarah and Webb to the ship's core. It was a vast chamber filled with flowing light and organic machinery. Pillars of living crystal pulsed with data. Streams of energy moved through conduits that looked like veins. In the center of it all floated a sphere of pure light, constantly shifting and changing. This is the heart of the synthesis, Julia explained. The point where human consciousness and ship systems truly merge. Anyone can connect here, share their thoughts and dreams with the collective. But we remain individuals. We choose when to connect and when to be alone. That choice is what keeps us human. Webb approached the sphere carefully, scanning it with his equipment. The complexity is beyond anything we've created. The processing power alone would require a planet-sized computer. How does it work? We don't fully understand it ourselves, Yuki admitted. She had followed them down. It evolved. We guided it, dreamed it into being, but it grew beyond our original design. That's what happens when you combine human intuition with unlimited computational power. You get something that can imagine possibilities and make them real. Sarah turned to Julia. What do you want from Earth? Why risk coming back when you know the galaxy might fear you? Julia met her eyes steadily. We want to come home. We want asylum. We want to share what we've learned. But more than that, we need to warn you. We've detected something coming toward Earth. Something terrible. The sphere in the center of the chamber pulsed, and suddenly they could all see it. A holographic projection filled the air around them. A fleet of massive ships, dark and menacing, moving through space toward the Sol system. The Vexral Harvesters, Julia said quietly. A machine species that consumes biological civilizations. They've destroyed 12 races that we know of. They're coming for Earth, and they'll arrive in 6 months. The Galactic Assembly's fleets won't be enough to stop them. We've run the simulations 1,000 times. You need us. You need what we've become. Webb's face went white. You're asking us to accept you because we need your help. No, Yuki said firmly. We're asking you to accept us because we're still your people. Because Julia's friend back on Earth probably mourned for her for decades. Because that little girl deserves to see an ocean. Because we're human enough to come home. And because we're changed enough to help you survive what's coming. But the choice is yours. It's always been about choice. The projection of the Vexral fleet filled the chamber, dark and terrible and coming closer every second. Sarah looked at the synthesis crew around her, at Julia, who had survived 300 years and still smiled with human warmth, at Yuki, who had made an impossible choice to save her people, at the little girl who dreamed of swimming in the ocean. We need to go back, Sarah said quietly. We need to tell them everything. And then Earth needs to decide what humanity really means. As they left the core chamber, Sarah looked back once. The sphere of light pulsed gently like a heartbeat. Like hope. The United Earth Council chamber was in chaos. 200 representatives shouted at each other across the circular room. Admiral Chen stood at the center podium trying to maintain order. She felt like she was watching civilization tear itself apart over a choice that should have been simple. But nothing about the Prometheus was simple. They're not human anymore. Director Hassan Nkrumah slammed his hand on his desk. He was a tall man with fierce eyes and a voice like thunder. They're contaminated, changed. If we let them return, they'll change us too. Everything that makes us human will be lost. They're still our people. Representative Maria Gonzalez shot back. They have children. They feel emotions. They laugh and cry and dream. What makes them less human than us? The fact that they're stronger, smarter? That they survived when they should have died? Chen watched the arguments flow back and forth. For 3 days, the council had debated. Half wanted to welcome the Prometheus with open arms, seeing them as humanity's next evolutionary step. The other half wanted to quarantine them, maybe even destroy them if they posed a threat. And in 6 months, the Vexral fleet would arrive. 6 months to decide whether to accept help from people who weren't quite human anymore. Dr. Webb stood up from his seat in the observation gallery. May I speak? The council fell silent. Webb walked down to the center floor, his tablet clutched in his shaking hands. I've studied the biological samples from the synthesis crew, he said, his voice steady despite his fear. What I found both terrifies and amazes me. The integration is partially communicable, not like a disease. It's more like an invitation. Humans who spend time near synthesis individuals report feeling a pull, an understanding of how they could enhance themselves. It's a choice, always a choice, but the possibility becomes real once you're exposed to it. Nkrumah stood up. You see? Contamination. Once they're here, everyone will want to change. In 2 generations, baseline humans will be extinct. We'll all be forced to evolve or be left behind. Is that so terrible? Gonzalez asked quietly. Humans have always evolved. We used to live in caves. Now we live among the stars. Every generation changes. Why is this different? Because we controlled those changes, Nkrumah shot back. We chose them deliberately, slowly, as a society. This is too fast. Too radical. We don't know what we'll lose. Chen activated the main display. The projection of the Vexral fleet appeared above them, rotating slowly. Everyone in the chamber stared at it in silence. While we argue, Chen said, this is coming. The Prometheus has shared their analysis. The Galactic Assembly's combined fleet has a 3% chance of defeating the Vexral using conventional tactics. 3%. The synthesis claims they can find weaknesses, use creative warfare, fight in ways the Vexral can't predict, but only if we accept their help. So we have to accept them or die, someone shouted from the back. That's blackmail. No, a new voice said. Yuki Tanaka appeared in holographic form at the podium. She had insisted on addressing the council directly. That's reality. We're offering you a choice. 3 choices, actually. The council chamber went silent. Everyone stared at the old woman who had lived for 347 years. First choice, Yuki said. Rejection. We leave and never return. You face the Vexral alone. Maybe you win. Probably you don't. But you remain pure, unchanged, fully human as you define it now. Your choice is honored and we disappear forever. She paused, letting that sink in. Second choice. Limited integration. We fight for Earth, but we remain separate. We'll be your protectors, your guardians, but never your family. We'll save you, then leave. The gap between baseline humans and synthesis humans becomes permanent. 2 branches of humanity forever divided. Nkrumah leaned forward, listening intently. Third choice, Yuki continued, her voice softer now. Full acceptance. You recognize us as human, as part of your civilization. Integration becomes voluntary but available. Those who want to change can choose to. Those who don't can stay as they are. Both are honored. In time, maybe the line between baseline and enhanced blurs. Maybe it doesn't. But we face the future together as one species that happens to have many forms. And if we choose the third option, Nkrumah asked carefully, what happens to our government? Our laws? If some people become as powerful as you claim, won't they dominate everyone else? Yuki smiled sadly. We've thought about that. If you choose the third option, we propose a law. No synthesis human can hold governmental power over baseline humans. We can advise. We can serve. But we cannot rule. The choice to integrate must never come with political power as a reward. It must be personal, individual, free from ambition. Chen watched the council members whisper to each other. The mood was shifting. She could feel it. I want to show you something, Chen said. She activated another display. The image of a young woman appeared. Captain Sarah Chen, her niece. 3 days ago, my niece requested voluntary integration. She wanted to understand the synthesis from the inside. I'm going to play her testimony now. The hologram shifted to show Sarah sitting in a medical bay. Thin lines of light traced patterns across her skin. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. It hurts, Sarah said in the recording. Not physically. It's like expanding your mind until you think it might break. Suddenly you can feel the ship around you. Sense the energy flowing through it. You can think faster, see patterns you never noticed before. But you know what the strangest part is? I still feel like me. I still remember my childhood. I still miss my favorite coffee. I still love my aunt. I'm Sarah Chen, just with more ways to experience the universe. The recording paused. Sarah looked directly at the camera. I'm still human enough to be scared. I'm still human enough to hope. I'm still human enough to want to save Earth. That should count for something. The council chamber was completely silent. Then a small voice spoke from the entrance. May I say something? Everyone turned. A little girl stood at the doorway, the same one Sarah had met on the Prometheus. She walked down to the center floor, her circuit-patterned skin glowing softly. My name is Emma, the girl said. I'm 10 years old. I was born on the Prometheus. I've never seen Earth, but my mom tells me stories about it. She says there are places where water falls from the sky. She says there are animals that sing and plants that smell sweet. She says it's the most beautiful place in the universe. Emma looked around at all the serious adult faces watching her. I know I'm different. I know my skin glows and I can talk to computers with my thoughts. But I also know I get sad when my friends are sad. I know I laugh when something is funny. I know I cried when my grandfather died last year. I know I want to see Earth more than anything in the world. She turned to Director Nkrumah, looking up at him with big, honest eyes. Sir, why does being smarter and stronger make me less human? I don't understand. My heart still beats. I still dream at night. I still hope. Isn't that what being human means? Nkrumah stared at the little girl for a long moment. Chen watched something change in his face. The hard lines softened. The fierce certainty wavered. No, Nkrumah said quietly. No, it doesn't make you less human. I was wrong. I was afraid of losing something, but I was looking at the wrong thing. He stood up and addressed the council. I move that we accept the third option with conditions. The synthesis can return to Earth. Integration becomes legal but voluntary and heavily regulated. No one can be forced to change. No one can be punished for refusing to change. And the power restrictions Yuki Tanaka proposed become law. Those who integrate accept that they cannot hold governmental authority over those who remain baseline. I second the motion, Gonzalez said immediately. The vote was called. Chen watched the board light up with votes. It wasn't unanimous. 20% still voted no, still feared the change too much. But the majority agreed the synthesis could come home. Emma burst into tears, hugging Yuki Tanaka tightly. Around them, the holographic forms of other synthesis crew members appeared, all of them crying tears of joy. But then Webb's console started screaming. "Admiral," he shouted. "New contact!" Something just appeared at the edge of our sensor range. Multiple contacts. Hundreds of them. Chen felt her blood run cold. "The Vexral." "Yes," Webb whispered. "But there's more. The signatures. Admiral, they match records from the 3 species that failed their own synthesis. The corrupted. They're with the Vexral fleet. On the main display, the enemy fleet appeared. Massive dark ships surrounded by smaller vessels that looked organic and wrong, like something that had been alive once but had been twisted into something terrible. "They're not coming in 6 months," Chen said, her voice hollow. "They're here now." Yuki Tanaka's hologram flickered with distress. "They must have detected us. The Prometheus's signal when we arrived. They knew what we were. They came early to destroy us before we could help you." Emma looked up at the display at the terrible fleet approaching Earth. "Can we still win?" "I don't know," Chen admitted. Then she looked at the little girl, at her hope and fear and very human courage. "But we're going to try. All of us together." The Prometheus moved into Earth orbit, taking position alongside the UEF fleet. For the first time in 300 years, the lost ship had truly come home. Just in time for war. The Vexral fleet emerged from dark space like a nightmare made real. 247 capital ships, each the size of a small moon, blocked out the stars. Their hulls were black metal, smooth and perfect, with no markings or windows. Behind them came the corrupted ships. These vessels were horrible to look at. They had once belonged to living species, but now they were twisted things, part machine and part rotting flesh, screaming silent screams into the void. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the horizon, watching the enemy approach on her displays. Her fleet numbered 83 ships. The Galactic Assembly had sent another 112. Against nearly 400 enemy vessels, they looked small and fragile. "All ships report ready," her tactical officer said. His voice was steady, but Chen could see the fear in his eyes. "The Prometheus?" she asked. "In position," the officer replied. "They're holding station just ahead of our formation." Chen watched the massive colony ship on her display. It looked so different from the military vessels around it, where their ships were angular and weapon-bristled. The Prometheus curved and flowed, its living hull pulsing with light. It looked peaceful, beautiful. But Chen knew what it could do. She had seen the simulations. "Open a channel to all ships," she ordered. "Let me speak to everyone." The communication officer nodded. "You're live, Admiral." Chen took a deep breath. "This is Admiral Chen Reiko to all UEF and Galactic Assembly forces. In a few minutes, we're going to face an enemy that has destroyed 12 civilizations. They're stronger than us. They outnumber us. By every logical calculation, we should lose this battle." She paused, looking at her crew. Young faces, brave faces, but we have something they don't. We have people who fight for their homes, for their families, for their future. We have creativity and courage and the absolute refusal to accept extinction. We have the Prometheus, our lost brothers and sisters who became something new, but never forgot where they came from. Today we show the galaxy what humanity means. We show them that we don't accept impossible odds. We rewrite them. On her display, she could see the other ships responding. Lights flashing acknowledgement. Weapons powering up. Hearts strengthening all ships, she said softly. "Engage the enemy." The battle began with a wave of missiles from the Galactic Assembly fleet. Thousands of warheads streaked toward the Vexral formation, trailing fire across the darkness. The Vexral ships didn't even try to evade. Their shields simply activated. Perfect energy barriers that caught every missile and absorbed the explosions without a flicker. "Shields holding at 100%, Webb reported from his science station. "Our weapons aren't even scratching them." The Vexral returned fire. Beams of pure energy, so bright they hurt to look at, lanced out from their ships. The first beam struck a Galactic assembly cruiser. The ship's shields lasted exactly 2 seconds before collapsing. The beam punched through the hull and the cruiser exploded, scattering debris across space. "Break formation," Chen ordered. "All ships evasive maneuvers." The fleet scattered as more beams cut through space. Ships dodged and weaved, firing back with everything they had, but nothing worked. The Vexrel shields adapted to every weapon type. Kinetic rounds, energy beams, plasma torpedoes. The shields simply adjusted their frequencies and absorbed them all. Another ship died. Then another. The corrupted vessels moved through the chaos, firing weapons that looked organic, that seemed to rot the ships they touched rather than destroying them cleanly. Then the Prometheus moved. The colony ship didn't accelerate normally. One moment it was holding position. The next moment it was simply somewhere else, as if it had skipped the space between. It appeared right in the middle of the Vexrel formation, so close to their ships that their beams couldn't track it. "What just happened?" Chen's tactical officer shouted. Webb stared at his console in disbelief. Dark matter manipulation. The Prometheus just folded space around itself. It didn't travel through space. It moved space itself, the Prometheus fired, but its weapons weren't like anything in the UEF arsenal. Streams of energy erupted from the ship, but these streams were alive, thinking, adapting. They touched a Vexrel ship's shields, and instead of being absorbed, they learned. They rewrote themselves to match the shield frequency, then changed again to be exactly opposite. The shields collapsed. The Vexrel ship's hull cracked open like an egg, exposing the machinery inside. The Prometheus fired again, and this time the beam reached deep into the enemy vessel and rewrote its central computer, turning the ship's own systems against it. The Vexrel ship began attacking its neighbors. "They're not just destroying them," Webb breathed. "They're hacking them, reprogramming them at a fundamental level." 3 more Vexrel ships fell to the Prometheus's weapons. Then the enemy fleet adapted. Their shields changed frequency randomly, making it harder for the Prometheus to match them. They began firing at the colony ship from multiple angles at once, but the Prometheus was already gone, appearing on the other side of the formation. And now it wasn't alone. Sarah Chen's voice came over the comm, speaking from inside the Prometheus. "All UEF ships were transmitting tactical data directly to your targeting computers. The synthesis has identified weaknesses in the Vexrel shield harmonics. Fire when the patterns light up." On Chen's tactical display, certain Vexrel ships began to pulse with targeting indicators. The pattern shifted and flowed, showing brief moments of vulnerability. "All ships follow the Prometheus's guidance," Chen ordered. "Fire on designated targets." The human fleet poured fire into the weak points. This time the shields flickered. Damage got through. Not much, but some. It was the first real damage they had inflicted. The battle became a dance. The Prometheus would appear, strike, disappear. The human ships would follow its guidance, hitting weak points in perfect coordination. The Galactic Assembly forces adapted their tactics, working with the humans instead of fighting independently. But ships kept dying. For every Vexrel vessel destroyed, 3 Allied ships were lost. The math was brutal and simple. They couldn't win. Then the corrupted fleet moved forward, and Chen saw true horror. The corrupted ships opened channels, broadcasting directly into the minds of everyone in the human fleet. Chen heard screaming in her head. Not with her ears, but deeper in her thoughts. The screams of 3 species who had tried to become more and failed, who had been trapped in eternal suffering, forced to serve machines that destroyed everything they touched. "Join us." The voices wailed. "Surrender. Evolution is pain. Change is death. Join us and end the suffering." Chen saw crew members on her bridge collapse, clutching their heads. Even through her own pain, she understood. The corrupted were trying to break their spirits, make them lose hope. "Prometheus," she gasped into her comm.
"Can you stop the transmission?"
"We can do better," Yuki Tanaka's voice replied. "But it will cost us. Admiral, we can interface with the corrupted. We can remind them what they've lost. We can free them. But it requires someone to serve as a bridge. Someone baseline human who understands both what we are and what we were." Chen understood immediately what Yuki was asking. Someone would have to connect their consciousness to the corrupted network. Someone would have to experience their pain, their madness, their 300 years of suffering, and that person would probably not survive. "I'll do it," Chen said without hesitation. "Aunt, no," Sarah's voice screamed over the comm. I'm 63 years old, Chen said calmly. I've lived a good life. These people need someone who remembers what hope feels like, someone who remembers what it means to be human enough to die for something worth saving. She turned to her first officer. Commander, you have the bridge. Win this battle. Before anyone could stop her, Chen ran to the shuttle bay. Minutes later, her small craft was racing toward the Prometheus. The colony ship opened itself to receive her, its hull flowing apart to create a landing bay that hadn't existed seconds before. Chen ran through the corridors, guided by lights that seemed to know where she needed to go. She reached the core chamber, where the sphere of light pulsed and waited. Yuki Tanaka was there, ancient and sad. Are you certain? I'm certain, Chen said. Do it. The connection was agony. Chen felt her consciousness expand, reaching out through space toward the corrupted fleet. She felt their pain, their madness, their endless screaming. 3 species trapped in bodies that wouldn't die, forced to kill and consume, unable to end their suffering. But Chen didn't fight them. She didn't try to free them with force. Instead, she showed them memories. Her grandmother laughing, her niece as a baby, the first time she had seen Earth from space and understood how beautiful and fragile life was. She showed them people growing old and dying peacefully, surrounded by loved ones. She showed them funerals where people cried not because death was terrible, but because life had been precious. She showed them the beauty in ending. One by one, the corrupted species remembered. They remembered why they had wanted to live in the first place. They remembered love and loss and the gentle acceptance of mortality. They understood that they had been slaves for so long because they had forgotten how to let go. The corrupted ships stopped firing. Their weapons powered down. Their systems began to shut themselves off one by one. 3 months after the battle, Earth's orbit was still crowded with debris. Memorial satellites floated among the wreckage, each one carrying the names of the fallen. 38,000 people had died defending Earth. Admiral Chen Reiko's name was carved on the largest memorial, along with the 3 corrupted species who had finally found peace. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the window of the Prometheus, looking down at Earth. The planet looked so peaceful from here. Blue and green and white wrapped in clouds, perfect and precious. She touched the window and the glass responded to her, becoming transparent at her touch, as if the ship understood she wanted to feel closer to home. You're thinking about her, Yuki Tanaka said softly, walking up beside her. The old woman moved slowly now, even with the synthesis keeping her alive. 347 years was a long time to carry memories. Every day, Sarah said, she saved us all. She proved that baseline humans and synthesis humans could work together, that we could trust each other. She did more than that, Yuki said. She showed us that evolution doesn't mean abandoning humanity. It means carrying it forward in all its forms. Below them, small shuttles began to rise from Earth's surface. They carried people who had made their choice. Some wanted to integrate, to become part of the synthesis. Others simply wanted to visit, to see the ship that had saved them, to meet the people who were human but different. The United Earth Council had kept its promise. Integration was legal but voluntary. Clinics had opened in major cities offering the enhancement to anyone who wanted it. But the process took time, included months of counseling, and could be reversed in the early stages. The council had made sure that no one could be pressured or forced to change. How many have chosen integration? Sarah asked. About 15,000 so far, Yuki replied. And about 3 million are on waiting lists. But there are 8 billion people on Earth. Most want to stay as they are. And that's good. That's as it should be. A healthy humanity needs both. Those who leap forward and those who hold steady. Both are necessary. Dr. Webb arrived, slightly out of breath from hurrying through the corridors. He still wasn't entirely comfortable on the Prometheus, even though he had been studying the ship for 3 months. Captain Chen, Yuki, we have a visitor. Director Nkrumah is requesting permission to come aboard. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Nkrumah had resigned his position as head of biosecurity after voting against the synthesis initially. She hadn't expected to see him again. Send him up, she said. Minutes later, Nkrumah stepped onto the observation deck. He looked different from the last time Sarah had seen him. Less angry, more tired, more human. Director, Sarah said formally. Just Hassan now, he replied. I'm not a director anymore. I stepped down. I know. I heard you publicly apologize to the synthesis. That took courage. Nkrumah walked to the window and looked down at Earth. I was wrong. I was so afraid of losing what made us human that I couldn't see we were expanding it, not erasing it. Your aunt taught me that. She died to save people she'd never met, including the corrupted who had been torturing humanity for centuries. That's the most human thing I've ever seen. He turned to face Sarah directly. I came to ask if you would help me. The council is forming a new department, the Integration Ethics Board. We need people who understand both worlds to help write the guidelines to make sure integration stays voluntary and safe, to make sure we don't repeat the mistakes the corrupted made. Would you serve? Sarah felt tears in her eyes. You want a synthesis human to help regulate synthesis humans? I want someone who remembers being baseline and understands being enhanced, Nkrumah said. Someone who can see both sides. Someone who has the wisdom to know that different doesn't mean better or worse, just different. Sarah looked at Yuki, who nodded encouragement. Yes, Sarah said.
I'll help. 6 months later, the first synthesis enclave opened in Australia.
It was a beautiful place, built with both traditional architecture and flowing synthesis structures. Baseline humans and enhanced humans lived side by side, working together, learning from each other. The boundaries were open. Anyone could visit. Anyone could leave. Emma, the little girl who had spoken to the Earth Council, finally got her wish. Sarah took her to the ocean on a bright summer day. Emma stood at the water's edge, feeling the waves wash over her feet for the first time. Her circuit-patterned skin glowed brighter with excitement. It's cold, Emma laughed, splashing in the surf. And it tickles. Sarah watched the girl play, and her heart felt full. This was why they had fought. This was why her aunt had sacrificed herself, so that a child could feel the ocean and laugh. Behind them, baseline human children played on the beach with their synthesis friends. To them, the differences were interesting but not frightening. They were just kids playing together, the way kids always had. The Prometheus prepared to leave Earth orbit again. The ship had been resupplied and repaired, though it had healed much of its own damage through the living systems Yuki had designed centuries ago. Yuki Tanaka stood in the core chamber one last time. She was ready. She had lived for 347 years. She had seen her people survive impossible odds. She had seen them come home. She had seen humanity accept them, not despite their changes, but including them. It was enough. It was time to rest. She disconnected from the ship systems one by one, letting her consciousness separate from the synthesis network. The process was painless, gentle, like falling asleep after a very long day. Thank you, she whispered to the ship, to her crew, to humanity. Thank you for not being afraid to change. Thank you for remembering why we wanted to live. Yuki Tanaka died peacefully, surrounded by people who loved her. The Prometheus dimmed its lights in mourning, and across Earth and among the stars, people who had never met her bowed their heads in respect for the woman who had saved them all by daring to imagine a different kind of future. 20 years later, a new generation stood at a spaceport, ready to board a colony ship heading to a distant star. Among them were both baseline humans and synthesis humans, working together to build a new world. A teenage girl with glowing circuit patterns stood next to her fully baseline human friend. They had grown up together, gone to school together, dreamed together. The fact that one could interface with technology and would live 200 years while the other relied on tools and would live a standard human lifespan didn't matter to them. They were both human. They were both reaching for the stars. Do you think we'll change as much as the Prometheus did? The baseline girl asked. Her synthesis friend smiled. Maybe in completely different ways. That's the point, isn't it? We get to choose. We get to evolve or stay the same. Both are okay. Both are human. Their ship launched, passing close to the Prometheus on its way out of the system. The ancient colony ship had become a legend, a symbol of humanity's ability to change while staying true to itself. It traveled the galaxy now, visiting new species, sharing its story, teaching others how to evolve ethically. The Prometheus flashed its lights in greeting, a human gesture preserved across centuries and transformation. The new colony ship flashed back. And somewhere in the darkness of space, Admiral Chen Reiko would have smiled to see it. Far from Earth, in a research station orbiting a distant star, scientists studied the data from the battle with the Vexrel. They had learned so much. The Galactic Assembly was rewriting its protocols on technological integration. The old fears were fading, replaced by curiosity and hope. Ambassador Threlkith, the crystalline Valyrian who had once warned humanity about the dangers of synthesis, stood before the assembly and made a historic speech. For millennia, we have feared what happened to humanity's Prometheus, Threlkith said, their crystal body reflecting rainbow light across the chamber. We have seen species attempt integration and fail catastrophically. But we were wrong to assume all such attempts must end in tragedy. The humans have shown us something we had forgotten. The key is not avoiding change. The key is choosing it freely, maintaining mortality and never forgetting why life matters in the first place. The assembly voted unanimously to remove the quarantine protocols for ethical synthesis. 12 species immediately requested human advisors to help them explore their own potential for integration. Humanity, the youngest member of the Galactic Assembly, became the teacher. On Earth, in a museum dedicated to the Prometheus, a final message played on loop. It was Admiral Chen's last transmission before she entered the neural bridge. Millions of people came every year to hear it. I don't know if I'll survive this, Chen's voice said, calm and certain. But I know why I'm doing it. Because those corrupted species forgot they were mortal. They tried to live forever and lost themselves. We won't make that mistake. We know that death gives life meaning. We know that endings make the journey precious. I'm choosing this ending so that others can have their beginnings. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was full of hope. Tell them I was human to the last. Tell them we all were. Baseline or synthesis, organic or enhanced, we're all human as long as we remember to care. As long as we remember to sacrifice for each other. As long as we choose who we become instead of having it forced upon us. The message ended with her final words, now carved on memorials across Earth and among the stars.